One. Welcome, everybody. I am Stephen ADIKA. You're an artist on record, your ultimate intimate conversation with your favorite artists. And today it is sad news in rock and roll, rockabilly world. The passing right here of Robert Gordon. He had passed away. And it's something sad. I mean, this guy was a pioneer of rockabilly sound. In the 70s, he was part of New York City CBGBs. Robert Gordon, if you're not familiar with him, many fans and music historians believe that he brought back the 50s. But we have a friend in the audience. He's going to talk to us a little about Robert. He knew him, and I'll bring him right in here. Danny B. Harvey. He's in the studio with us, and we'll celebrate the passing of this legend, Robert Gordon. Hey, man, how you doing?
Pretty good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I put my glasses on so I could see you better, man. You're looking pretty well, Danny. I haven't seen you, I think, since the Viper Room. I think the last time I played with you. And I'm going to introduce you to everybody in the audience really quick. This is Danny B. Harvey. And Danny B. had a band called Headcat with the legendary Lemmy of Motorhead. It was a three-piece. And on the kit, on the stand-up was our friend from the Stray Cats, Slim Jim Phantom. So welcome, my friend, to the show. Man. And
sad day to be talking to you, but I'm glad to see you though.
I'm glad to see you too. And you know what? I reached out to you because I actually saw your post, and you did a great post to Robert on there with a video. And you did some work with Robert Gordon, huh?
Yeah, well, I've known Robert forever, like being part of the rockabilly scene in the early '80s with the Rockettes. But right before COVID, like in 2019, we did an album in Austin. And and it came out in Cleopatra, and it was called Rockabilly for Life, and that was the last album he did. Yes, it was an honor to work with him after all these years, and I'm glad we got to do that album because it was a lot of fun, and I got to take him back to singing. The goal of him, I did the album, I wanted him to sing like the way he did on his early albums. Mm-hmm. I remember I made the keys higher for him, and he'd complain. He goes, "I can't sing that high," because Robert really wanted to sing in his low voice. I go, and then he would sing, and I go, just try it. And then his friend Kenny was with me. Go, dude, that sounds great. And Robert would go, wow, that doesn't sound like a 70-year-old man, does it? I go, no, you sound like young Robert Gordon. He's quite happy.
I mean, he came, Robert, I guess, and you know his bio probably better than me, but I know he came from the CBGB scene as being a New Yorker, when it was almost like that time rockabilly, he was reviving it again in his own way.
Yeah, he was the way I got into rockabilly. I was like, when I was, when I was a teenager, I was really into jazz. I was into, the Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck, the stuff that everyone likes. And I got into like progressive rock a little bit, and I found out who Chris Spedding was. And he was playing a lot of sessions at that time. And so I saw Robert Gordon, that Chris Spedding was playing at the Roxy in LA with someone named Robert Gordon. So I went down to see Chris Spedding. And I was blown away by the music, and I went, "Wow, rockabilly is perfect. I can do country leads. I can do my jazz riffs. I can do blues riffs. I can play everything I love, which is I like all kinds of music. I can play it over rockabilly." So Robert's the one that got me into it indirectly, playing rock.
That is funny. So what was it like to be in the studio with Robert?
Oh, Robert's a lot of people know Robert's a very opinionated person, and so. So he comes in and right away, him and me butted heads. The first day we really butted heads because I'm a really opinionated person. And when I'm doing an album, I told him before, I'm in charge. And he said, I'm in charge. And we actually had a lot of words. But we worked it all out the first couple of days. And then we got down to work, and we got the system that worked, and I got good vocals out of him because he didn't really want to fight with me, and I didn't want to fight with him. So it's kind of like then we had this mutual respect for each other. I already respected him, but then I earned his respect, I should say, because I already respected him. So the rest of the album that we were working as a team, and he'd ask me if things was okay, and I'd ask him if things was okay. But that first day he came in, and he, like I said, he's very opinionated, and he's very in control of his brand and his sound. And so when I tried to raise the keys, and he'd say no. At first, it took a lot of fighting, and I say fighting, I mean verbal.
Yeah.
To me telling him like me, no, I'm doing this. I'm in charge. He go, I'm in charge. I go, no, I'm in charge. I'm hired by the record company, and you're working for the record company, and on, that kind of dialogue. But in the end, I earned his respect by doing that. And when he heard like at that little video I posted, when he heard his vocals back, he was like really, really blown away by how good we'd done something. That video posted him listening to his vocal takes and him saying how blown away he is, and wow, this is like how it's really blowing his mind how great it sounded.
It was a cool little video. I mean, to look back at it now, and on this sad day, you could see the respect he had because he was real excited in that. He has a fast clip because of the copyright strikes. Here's Robert back in the day. Check this out really quick.
Okay.
Cool, man. I mean, cool cat, man. You know,
that was Link Wray. That stuff was so good. When I moved to New York in 1980, and I got to meet him, and he was dating a girl at the time who was a mutual friend of the girl I was dating, so I got to hang out with him a lot. And he was to me, that was like cool to meet him, because to me he brought it back, and he seemed more like a punk than like a punk rocker. He came out the tough darts thing, and he had a real New York attitude. He's like the first guy I met like that was like really tough and punky and from New York and in Rockabilly. He's like the real thing. Him and Link Wray, Link Wray was always a badass, but he didn't hold anything over young Robert Gordon. Robert Gordon was just as much of a badass.
He had the mixture of all of it between the Fonz and the Lords of Flatbush, all of it.
When I first met, he pulled out like this white switchblade that had a naked woman white switchblade. He had a switchblade and pulled it out, and he showed me his switchblade. He put it back, and he walked on the streets with that. So,
what's so crazy about Robert? So you see that video, but then you don't, because you don't think of these guys coming out as crooners, but he could croon too. Because right here's a fast clip right here of him doing the best right here of my crooning that I think. I mean, very cool.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's amazing. And that's like as he got we did that album we did in 2019. He wanted to sing like that. He really wanted to croon all the time and sing low. And so I had to really push him to do. At first, it didn't take. When I say push him, it didn't take. The guy had it in him. It take more like just say no, we're doing it this way, and he could do it. And then I don't really say push him. He had it in him, and he really enjoyed singing rock and roll. And but at first he just wanted to sing. He wanted to pick some songs that featured him singing in a lower voice and ballads because he has such a great voice. And
beautiful voice. What was he listening to when you were working? Did he have like?
When I was working with him, he's really. We didn't listen to anything except the stuff we were working on, and he didn't really talk. He didn't seem to be that aware of modern stuff, but we listened to that stuff, and we told a lot of stories and stuff, and him and me, we'd work and we'd celebrate a little bit after work with some drinks and stuff, and then he'd tell me more stories about the old days. But we shared. I was a lot of it in the 80s. I was a lot of that time I was there too, so it was more like we shared memories of the same situation. And the really interesting thing I found out from that session about the early days is when he first went to do the Rockabilly things, he went to Richard Goddard, who produced my first band, and Richard Goddard and me are still friends. I actually done work for him in the past couple of years, but he told Richard he wanted to sing some like rockabilly stuff and do this and so Richard got Johnny Thunders to play guitar and another in the rhythm section that wasn't Rob Stoner and Howie Wyatt, is that the original guys? But he went into the studio with Johnny Thunders like playing guitar.
Wow.
And they did like some demos, and it's mainly because of the New York the Heartbreakers at the time. Robert really couldn't use Johnny Thunders. And so when I found that out, I asked Richard, got in touch with Richard, and I said, where are those demos? And he said, dude, I don't know where they are. I have no idea. They've been lost in time. But I go, man, if you could unearth those recordings with Johnny Thunders and Robert doing rockabilly songs in 1976, I think the world would go crazy.
Oh my God. I never knew about that.
Neither did I. Robert mentioned it. Then Richard backed up. Richard said, no, I don't have those. I lost a long time ago.
That is so crazy.
They're just mainly supposed to be demos, not just to see if it worked. And they liked it. So then they put the band together and they got Link Wray because they picked Link Wray because they needed a guitarist that would be a good foil for him. And so they got Link Wray. So.
Wow. Who else were they jamming with around that time? Do you remember?
That's the only story I know. I saw the original demos that Richard called in Johnny Thunders, and then he got Link to join the band, and the rest is history. And that's Link. He's like the Yardbird. He gets Link, then he goes to Chris Spedding, and then he goes to Danny Gatlin. You know what I mean? So,
it's so crazy. That you say the Thunders thing, because Thunders, a lot of his roots too, do a lot of doo-wop too, and he had that Dion thing, and just to hear those two whatever they could come up with together would have been magical.
Oh man, yeah. Richard says he doesn't know where those demos are.
What a shame.
And Robert, I don't think if Robert would have held on to it, he probably would have sent me a copy of it. But man, I just hope somebody somewhere could unearth that and upload it. I'd love to hear it. Like,
wow, that's crazy. Now, would he come to your gigs too? Would Robert ever step out of his zone?
Back in the early days, like in the early 80s, when the Rock Hats were working and Robert Gordon was working, if we were playing like at the Ritz, if he's in town, he'd show up, which, by the way, back then we worked so much, it wasn't often. The same thing, I remember going to see him with Danny Gatton once at the Ritz, and me and Smutty, our bass player, sitting on the side of the stage, watching the whole show with his manager from the side of the stage. Like, so we go see him, but that particular time, in the early 80s, we were both on tour all the time. But it's then over the years, we lost touch with people. And I think, so the only time I'd see Robert, like I saw him in Green Bay at a festival once. I saw him in France at a festival once. I'd run into him around, but plus then by then I knew Chris Spedding as well, so I'd run into them different places, and it was never going to each other's gigs anymore. It's mainly now we're getting older and we're in festivals together. You know?
But you know what? I guess you don't realize it back then. The history that you're in the midst of it all, because when the same here and. Even when we would do gigs with the old Star Effort band at the Viper, and then we'd play with you guys,
right?
I never realized like the history, even with what you got going on yourself,
right?
And when you talk about Richard, he's a legendary producer, but he's behind these songs like "Hang On, Sloopy," "My Boyfriend's Back," "I Want Candy." These are major songs that were part of an era, and these stories are just so lost. And even you watch that video clip of Robert and you talking, he's just talking like a normal guy. He's sitting there very casual and just like, I can't believe I knocked out all these songs and this many times in your video clip. And it's like, you go back to these videos and you forget this cat. And he also did a band with Slim Jim and Glenn Matlock.
They did that tour.
They did that tour together, which here's a clip of it right here while we're talking over here. They did some tour over here. Fortunately, I can't play the music, but you could see Slim's drum set over there, and there he is right there playing.
Yeah.
And I can play a little sound over here for you guys. Let's see if we can get this. Suspicion. Yeah, it's hard to hear, but anyway, there's the Phantom right there. And now you are at recording with the Phantom, right? Can we talk about anything what we're doing here?
I've been working. I married Jerry Lewis's niece, so now Jerry Lewis is my uncle, but my mother-in-law is his little sister, Linda Gale Lewis. So, and we were working on a duet album. Her and Mickey, her cousin Mickey Gilley and Linda Gale, they were doing a duet album, and we did a little bit right before Mickey Gilley passed away. And so now I got Linda's here, and we're going to the Sun Studio tonight and tomorrow night to record an album. Actually, we might even get 2 albums. We're going to record a lot of stuff. I'm going to try doing old school, like live in the studio. And Slim Jim, he flew in from LA last night, and he's going to be here playing drums. And then, then on Thursday, me and Slim Jim are doing a show together down in Oxford, Mississippi. So
that's cool. So you get to go. So congratulations. When did you get married?
I got married 2015.
Wow. So congratulations. That's a year I had a little one born. So see, you got married, I'm making babies. See, it's all rock and roll. And we like it, Danny. Now so he's mentioned Sun Studios, everybody that's famous, Elvis. Also, I guess Robert also featured the Jordanaires, which a cover of Bruce Springsteen's song Fire that he did. And Springsteen himself is playing. Is it true? Is he on the keyboards on that?
I don't know. I know the most things I know about that song is from what Rob Stoner posts. Rob Stoner posts stuff on Facebook, and I think he posted something the other day about that song that Bruce Springsteen brought into the session, and I think he said Bruce Springsteen plays keyboards on it, but Rob mentioned, because Rob came up with the bass line that kind of starts it off, and then he said and at that point he said Bruce Springsteen hadn't recorded it yet. He'd written it for Robert, but then later when he re-recorded it, he used Rocking Rob Stoner's bass part. So that's why he might have the post. But I know more facts about that song from Rob Stoner.
Okay.
Than I know from Robert. So or Richard and Richard, who produced it, he never talked anything about it.
Yeah.
But it's funny thing. Richard Goddard. This is funny. We during South by because I'd been doing some work with Richard the past couple of years. That's how we started working together again. And Richard, we went to this party during South by at the Orchard, which is Richard started the Orchard. And my wife was there. So I go, this is Annie Marie. And he goes, hey, you got to tell, did you know your brother, he goes, your uncle did the first song I ever wrote. So he wrote that song, I'm on Fire. And that it was Goddard, Feldman, and Goldstein, the same guys that wrote I Want Candy. And he said the first song they wrote as a team was I'm on Fire. And Jerry Lee Lewis recorded it back in 63 or something. And he said, then he's my wife, that's the song that gave me my break in the business. Like, man, you have to tell him that if you talk to your uncle that gave me the whole break. And it's so funny. I get this because I'm so used to like my friends, like he did Robert's first 2 albums, he did the Go-Go's first 2 albums.
That's right.
He did Blondie's first 2 albums. He did my first recordings in New York with Levi Dexter. I'm just so used to people saying Richard Goddard started our career.
Did Richard do the Ramones? Anything with the Ramones? Or
I don't know if he did or not. I know.
I'm not sure.
I first met him doing the Go-Go's record, but Clem Burke works with me a lot. And Clem always, he did the first 2 Blondie albums. It's funny to hear Richard say, you have to tell your uncle that he gave me my start in this business.
That's pretty wild. That's when
was called I'm on Fire, which is funny because Robert did the song Fire by Bruce Springsteen.
The Bruce Springsteen one. It's funny when you mention even Chris Spedding. It's funny because when I played with Dee Dee Ramone, we did Motorbike In. And I wasn't familiar really much with the rock, but it's a great song. And Dee Dee was adamant about it. Let's do it. And he's a big Spedding fan. And we would it would be the opener
down the Queens Highway.
That's I mean, just the history to be around all these cats, it's incredible. And even tonight, you're over there recording at to me, it's the Abbey Road of American rock and roll, son.
Right.
You think about it. That's all the history there. It's
pretty fun. It's fun that Jim's here. And Jim was here 3 months ago. Wyona Judd wanted to do a single at Sun, and her husband or boyfriend, he's a drummer, but they wanted to get Slim Jim to play drums. They flew Slim Jim in to do this like Rockabilly track. So Jim has just recorded there 3 months ago. So when I was going through, like, since I'm producing, I was working with the engineer over there at Sun, and I said, did you do the session with Wyona? He's like, oh yeah, I was the engineer in that. And I go, oh, then you know all how to set up Slim Jim's set. He goes, oh yeah, I've got it all wired. I know exactly how to set up his drums.
That's wild. And that is cool. So Danny, now you're working on this new record, and everybody here, this is Danny B. Harvey. You got to check. I'm going to put links for Danny's projects down below. But are you doing something with your wife too? You do a project with her as well?
Well, me and my wife, we put 2 albums out together, and we're doing the third. We're in the process of actually did 3 albums together, 1 EP, 2 albums, and we're finishing up the third album. It's just we've been so busy like this past couple years because I did the Robert Gordon album, I did the album with the singer from 69 Eyes. I did the duet. I did a Mickey Gilley and Anne Margaret duet that came out earlier this year, and I have a Sammy Kershaw album I'm working on, and I'm doing the Linda Gale albums we're working on, and there's just a lot of stuff.
That's a lot of stuff.
I did the Dale Watson album that came out 2 months ago. I did Dale Watson's new album. So
wow, and so Anne Margaret, which Adam Hamilton was working on that.
Yeah, Adam was because I was sending. Adam did her vocals, so I was actually sending the tracks to. He was sending me her vocal tracks, and I sent him the backing tracks. So we were working together because he was actually doing the vocals out in LA because there's no way to get her to come to Texas for a couple of songs. Yeah, Adam I work with. And what's a funny story back to Robert, like when we did this album, when we did the album, we cut everything pretty much live, and we did the whole album with me playing guitar and this rhythm section from Austin and Robert singing, and Robert loved it. He took it around. I gave him rough mixes. And he took it around the world for like a year. But the goal all along was to get special guests. So at one point we got, we went and got like Dave Alvin to play on it. We got James Williamson. We got Chris Spedding to do a song on it and stuff. Wow. But he got Albert Lee to play. So he had to do it out in LA. So he went to Adam Hamilton's studio. I sent Adam the backing track, and he had Albert Lee play along. So he took a video for me. So I sent the video to Robert. I go, here's Albert Lee playing a solo in your song. And the video, it's where you can hear Robert singing, and you see Albert Lee jamming along, and he does the solo. And I sent it to Robert, and he gives me like this compliment. And he says, hey, that's really good, but make sure you put it down in the mix because I like your guitar solo better. I go, what? I'm not going to put Albert Lee down when I mix it. Albert Lee's like, I like your guitar solo better. So we're going to, I go. So in the end, when we did the album, it's finally all done. I don't know if the album came out and it's all special guests, but the CD, Robert, and it's fun. I mean, it's not a backhanded comment, but it's funny. It's like, I don't like the album, the new album. And we had, like I said, we have Dave Al, we have all these special guests. He goes, I like the stuff we did, just us. I like your guitar playing. So he insisted to the record company, if you have the CD, to put the whole album, what they call the rough mixes, on. Besides the album I produced with all the special guests, he went to put all the rough mixes I did with me playing all the guitars. So it's cool. It was a compliment, but at the same time, it's a drag. He didn't like all the special guests. But I said to him, you don't like Chris Betty? And he's like, well, Chris Betty's okay. I go, you don't like Steve Cropper? He goes, Steve Cropper's okay, but I like your
but wait, there was a lot of special guests on the record. You had Cropper.
Every song had a special guest on it.
Paul Schaefer, right? Dave Alvin, Clem, which we said Dave Alvin was on it. Kathy Valentine, Rosie Flores was on it, right?
Miguel Lewis
and James Williamson from the Iggy Pop, the Stooges, was he on it?
He's on the lead off track. I really like the solo. He did a lot. Robert, like my solo, he's like, I like your solo. If you like that, but Robert, it's a Robert. But what it is, it's a thing about a lot of producers don't give rough mixes for that reason. When you give an artist a rough mix and they listen to that, it's hard when you change it. They've grown to like what you gave them. Really, so there is producers that won't give artists rough mixes for that fact, because they know they're going to get married. So Robert for a whole year took it around, and people call me from England. They go, dude, I heard the new album. I go, well, that's just the rough mixes. So Robert was really, by that time, he loved it so much that when I start changing, even though I thought it was for the better, he liked what he'd been listening to, because he enjoyed it so much. Apparently, he was playing it all the time to himself and playing it to anyone he encountered on road. His new album, it's not even finished. We got special guests on every song.
He was just excited about it. So it's like you re-energized him.
But so it's cool. It's a cool compliment. He says, I like your guitar playing better. I like what we did better. But at the same time, I go, come on, why don't you like all these special guests? And one of my favorite, like I said, and we had like Dave Alvin did an amazing solo on it. I thought it was great, and every song has a special guest on it.
Now, is that Rockabilly for Life? Is that what it's called?
Rockabilly for Life, yeah.
For Life. Then that's on Cleopatra. I'll make sure links are down below, because everybody watching, please, you got to check out all this good music. And he also acted. He was an actor as well.
Love
in which was Willem Dafoe's. I believe it could have been his first role.
Yeah, I've heard that, and I know that Catherine Bigelow, who won the Oscar for directing The Hurt Locker, and also she directed. That's one of the first films she directed.
Wow.
And when I first met her, like I asked her, this is before it's on DVD or anything, and I said, can I get a copy of that on VHS? I was asking her for a copy of it, and she got me a copy of it. This is
that's cool. We have comments over here that just posting, seen Robert at the last Roadhouse in Minneapolis back in the 2000s. Wow. Yeah, wow. David. You know what? Actually, Danny B, and I'm going to give Danny some credit. And for people who don't know Danny or do know Danny, when you were doing the Head Cat and with Slim Jim and Lemmy was so in love with your guitar playing. I remember Jim telling me that as well too. Yeah. He was a big fan of your playing. And I know we're talking about Robert, but I got another legend is Lemmy, and I remember he'd come to the Cat Club and we'd jam, and he'd only want to do Chuck Berry songs, never Motorhead. He'd pick up the mic and want to sing Johnny Be Good or Back in the USSR, Beatles song. But playing with this guy and just the respect he had for you, what was that whole experience like?
That's cool. When I moved to in 1980, I moved to London with Levi Dexter, and we lived in London for like over a year. But when I first met Lemmy, and I said before I got into rock and roll, Chris Betting and Robert Gordon kind of got me into rock and roll. But I was listening to like the progressive rock, so I was a fan of Hawkwind. When I was like 13, I had Live Space Ritual, so I knew all about Lemmy's career. And I hadn't really listened to Motorhead at 1980. I guess at that point they only had 2 albums out. But he came down to Dingwalls to see me, to see me and Levi play. So I went over and introduced myself, and we kind of became friends. And whenever we would play, me and Levi learned how to play Motorhead Baby, the Johnny Guitar Watson song, just so if Lemmy showed up at our gig, we could dedicate the song Motorhead Baby to him. And so Lemmy would come to our show. And that's sort of how Slim Jim, that's sort of how he met Lemmy too. He showed up at a Stray Cats gig, and they're going, that's Lemmy. And he was a big fan of that music since I first met him. So over the years, I'd see him in New York, I'd see him in LA, but it wasn't until like, I guess 99, me and Jim had a band of Swing Cats with Lee, and we we brought him and Johnny Ramone in to do a couple songs together. And we did one song with Lemmy and Johnny, but then the next song, and we'd done Johnny the day before, so they weren't in the studio together. But then he goes, I can't sing, this is the wrong key. So he goes, you grab a bass, I'll grab a guitar, and Jim on the drums, and we cut a couple songs. And Lemmy said, let's start a band. So then it was like kind of cool, but Lemmy just liked that music. He loved that. He loved that the way I played it. And it's funny, when we do shows sometimes, he'd always listen to the tape, and I'd be driving around in my Honda, and he'd play the shows, and that'd be like during Crossroads, his last song is said, sometimes I get crazy and I do some flashy, fast beats, and he'd look at me and go, Dan, why are you playing so fast? I went to. He said, don't like it. Another time, I remember another time we played this show we opened for the Damned, and I had a Bigsby. So we were doing a Big River. I go down, 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 like that. And I did the next day. Oh no, so we played it. I take that back. We played the Roxy. The next day we were playing it an earlier show at the Damned. So I left him at 2 a.m. I saw him the next day at 1 in the studio, and he was like, Dan, why were you detuning last night? And I go, what? I go, you listen to the show? He goes, yeah, I listened to the show. He goes, Big River, you were detuning. I go, no, I was using my Bigsby. So he would like listen to everything, and he would. I mean, this is like only 8 hours later, he'd already like analyzed what I'd played, and he said, I go, no, I was going down, down, down with my Bigsby. He's like, don't do that, man. I like it better when you just play the way you normally play.
That is funny. You know, it's funny about these cats like that. They do analyze everything, and they observe everything.
Yeah,
and from everything, from the guitar playing, the bass playing, what you're talking about, they just analyze everything, huh? It's weird. It's
I saw you 8 hours ago, and you've been awake all night doing speed, so I know you haven't. What do you mean you listen to the art? He's in a casino too. You're in a casino.
A slot machine.
He left the gig and went to a casino. And he stays up all night, Lemmy. So I go, you listen to it? And he listened to, not only listened to it, he actually made note of that one little thing, which is down, 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 down. Yeah, it's like, wait, that minutia, he knew the minutia, but he'd say things like, hey, that solo you did last night, the third solo in this song, you did that. I really like what you played on that. And
That's
I go,
pretty cool.
And he go, you don't remember? I go, no, I have no idea what I played.
But he would remember every little thing. That's pretty cool. Yeah. What about now, Robert? The last time you spoke with him, do you remember your last conversation with Robert?
Yeah, well, the thing is, I actually booked some shows with Rob. Beginning, I booked him 3 shows in Texas. Tommy Price, the drummer, lives out here now, and Tommy got in touch
from Billy Idol fame.
Yeah, Billy Idol, Black Hearts, and so he also played with Robert a lot in the '80s. He got in touch with me, and Robert said, Tommy Price is there. You guys should book some gigs. So Tommy, I've been using him on some gigs, and so we booked 3 shows for Robert, and it was really good. They were going to be lucrative for him and stuff, and he hadn't played in Texas in a long time. And then in April, I get this thing with Tommy. Tommy goes, you talk to Robert? And I go, no. He goes, you should talk to him. So I send him a text. I say, hey, Robert, I hope everything's okay. Looking forward to the gigs, And I get a call at 2 a.m, and Robert calls, and I'm in bed, so I answer the phone, and he's in the hospital, and he says, I'm calling you from the hospital. I go, I go, so you can make calls from the hospital? He's like, yeah, because I'm here. I got my own room. And he goes, I go, what's wrong? He goes, I don't know what the hell's wrong with me, but I've been here for 2 weeks. He said something's wrong, and he said, but I'm losing money. I had to cancel 2 shows, but I have some shows next week. I'm not going to cancel. I told the doctors, regardless of what they think, I'm going to go do these shows. And of course, he had to cancel this too. He was sick and he was in there for like a long time. And that's when he called me from the hospital, and he said, I don't know what the hell's going on. They won't let me out. But that turned out to be, when they diagnosed, there's leukemia. And so that was like the last conversation I had with him, is when he had to finally cancel the shows. He said, I'm not going to cancel the shows in Texas. I told him there's no way I'm canceling. But then, like right before the end of May, he had to call and say, what's funny, he's Robert. He called and said, first he called and said, I can't do the shows. I go, right? He goes, well, they're not playing enough. And I go, what do you mean you're not paying enough? This is how much money you want. He's like, no, I would never do it for that. But I go, Robert, I can show you the text. You agreed to this amount of money. And it was good money, I thought. And he goes, and also I'm really sick and you want me in the hospital. And I go, you should have led with that. That's the reason to cancel. Like, I go, you should have led with that. You're too sick to do it. And then we got to talking about his health, and he didn't know what was wrong at the time. He said, I don't know what the hell's wrong, but I got to get home. I got to do these shows, and he was really upset that he couldn't play. So
he passed away. What was he, the young age at 75? He passed away. That's how old he was.
It's not paying enough. And I said, you should lead. And but I'm sick too. And I said, at least should have led with that.
Well, he had to keep, the persona over there, the rock and roll persona over there. But yeah, he passed away at the age of 75 years old. And you know what? These are great stories that you do have, great memories. And you know what? You got to work on a record with him, which is great, and all the other people you worked with too. And
great.
Now you got to come back on the show, and I want to know what your other projects are going to be coming up. So we got to talk about this Sun project and when you and your wife.
I hope it turns out good. But that's why we got Jim here, because first it's going to, and also we're making. Well, they're working on a documentary about Linda as well, being because she's been on the road with Jerry Lee since she was 15. Her first record in 1963 was a duet, "The Seasons of My Heart" on Sun with so we're going back to Sun Studios, and her first record was on Sun. But they're filming a documentary, so I thought it'd be cool to have my good friend Slim Jim in Sun Studios with me and her. So cool. Visually, and plus he knows this music, as good, if not better, than anyone else playing rockabilly. So
absolutely.
Yes, Lynn's quite excited that he's involved. Yes, that we'll see what happens the next couple of days, but. Well,
Danny, you know what? You're one of the great guitar players out there. You do a lot of good stuff. You got a lot of good music. I'm going to put links down below, so anybody watching, you click on Danny's stuff. And you have any shows coming up soon? You playing anywhere soon?
Well, I was playing in Oxford, Mississippi on Thursday with Slim.
With Slim. That's what you told me before. I'm all nuts. I forget.
They're coming up. I'm playing out for people close to LA. I'm playing on November 19th. That's right, the Saturday. Yeah, November 19th, I'm playing out in Joshua Tree. At that Red Dog Tavern. That new place has just opened. My friend's running that. So me and Annie Marie are gonna go out and play in Joshua Tree.
Cool. That's a cool vibe over there. I'm going to put your links there. I want everybody to follow you. And you also got a YouTube channel. I hope it's yours. Going to put links for that too.
Fine. Yeah, it's been doing, because of my wife. I just band the Devil's Daughters, which is my wife and Misty and myself, and it's been because of that band doing so well on YouTube. My YouTube channel is quite good, so I try to put in stuff that they'll like this because it's the Devil's Daughters, and I try to put. But here's a really cool video of my mother-in-law singing a duet with Carl Perkins, like back in the '60s.
So cool! That is so cool. Huh? Yeah. I was just talking about Carl Perkins. It was with Tommy Clufetis just a little while ago on the phone. Tommy plays with Ozzy Osbourne, played with Black Sabbath, the drummer. And we were talking about Carl Perkins, what an amazing guitar player he is. And I'm saying a lot of people don't even realize, if you listen to those early Beatles stuff, which, you could hear all Harrison's licks, all Perkins licks.
It's funny. I this morning I had breakfast at the place called The Cupboard here in Memphis, which is famous old breakfast. It's a place where Elvis used to eat, Johnny Cash. It's an institution here. But I went there with my mother-in-law and my father-in-law. But J.W. Witten showed up, and he was Jerry Lee's road manager for like more than a couple decades and stuff. And he was also, Slim Jim played with Jerry Lee for a while. You probably
yeah.
And so and JW was the road manager at the time. So we start talking about, we start talking about Slim Jim, their friends and stuff. And then we got into the whole thing about rockabilly. And he said, Jerry, because Jerry doesn't like to be called, he doesn't like the word rockabilly associated with his music at all. He doesn't like that word rockabilly. So Linda Gale goes, I know. He always told me he doesn't like to promote his rockabilly and stuff. And so I said, what do you think about this, having a drummer in the Stray Cats in the band? He goes, well, he liked it, but we weren't allowed to talk about the Stray Cats because of the rockabilly connections. They liked Slim Jim a lot. But to me, he goes, I think the best rockabilly artist ever was Carl Perkins. To me, and we had this exact conversation, like you said. I go, exactly. He's the one that influenced everyone. And I said the same thing. And he went, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, everyone, they follow Carl Perkins' lead. You know?
Absolutely. And I go, a lot of people don't know that. It's
Yeah.
these, and it's right. It's also, and you hear those early Beatles stuff. If you listen to Help and the bass lines, it's the country, because it all came from the country R&B.
Worshipped him in. Yeah.
And I mean, crazy. I mean, everybody. I mean, to this day, Keith Richards has his backstage a big picture of Jerry Lee right there by his boombox, which is really cool, and his little, shenanigans, whatever he has going on over there.
And he has that cool picture. He always has that same picture, Jerry Lee. He's on stage and he has the whiskey glass balanced on his mic stand. I go, imagine this, you're doing a show and you're more concerned about balancing your whiskey glass on top of your mic and what you're going to sing next.
Oh, I remember living in New York City right before I moved to Los Angeles, and I was working at Circus Magazine. It must have been in like around 90 or 89, and Jerry Lee was supposed to play, but it was canceled for some reason. I think he didn't feel good or something, and I was so bummed. I'm like, oh man, I wanted to see Jerry Lee, because I mean, come on.
Yeah.
One of the originals. I mean, man, what a monster on the keys. When you watch him on the keyboards, and his hand, his style, and his vocals, and the way his chops on the piano, it doesn't get better than that, man.
You like listening to his stuff. I mean, I always appreciate Jerry Lee, because he's always like a real, he was always a real rebel, real rock and roll guy. Like
a total rock. You're almost scared of him. He's so cool,
Now, but I've listened like no more. I listen like, oh, wow, some of the stuff he played is quite complicated as well. It's technically, besides the fact he's standing on top of the piano playing backwards, and when there's trying to light it on fire, the stuff he's playing is quite complicated.
Totally complicated, but he kept the groove. Always never lost the groove. Always had it going on. Incredible. I mean, these are great. You got to come back. Look, I have in the comments over here, we got Debbie Moeller saying, Danny has to come. Please come back, Danny. I got to have you come back, and we'll bring your bride. We'll talk about what you guys are talking. Let me tell you something. If YouTube is telling they want to hear you and your bride and the band, I mean, I think you might have to listen to them and maybe hit that go on the road with that. You never know,
Yeah.
Your wife's going to listen to this. She goes, listen to this Stefan guy. He's right. Happy wife, happy life. Okay, Danny?
Hey, man, this is great.
But, man, thank you for popping on at the last second, man. It's actually great to see you. We'll tell you,
man.
Yeah.
You have to tell me everything you're up to, too. I catch up. It's been a while, man.
We have to catch up, and I'm going to give you a call anyway, and I'll put all the proper links. We'll have everybody go click on what you're up to, and please follow my man Danny over here. Great guy, great guitar player, and got to work with a legend, Robbie Gordon, and many others. Nancy Sinatra, didn't you? Right? You played with a lot of people, didn't you?
Well, the funniest story I have about working with, I played with Nancy Sinatra, and I played with Nancy. This is back in like 2005, 2006.
Was that when Don Randy was also?
Yeah, Don Randy's always been with, and I got the gig from Gilby. Gilby played with her. And Gilby couldn't do the show, and so I was doing a session over Gilby's house. And he said, "You read music, right?" And I go, "Yeah." And he said, "Hey, do you want to go fill in with me for?" He said, "Do you want to fill in with me for Nancy?" I go, "Yeah." So I went in and I walked into that. I remember I went to the rehearsal, and Nancy goes, "Okay, you have to promise me if you get this gig, you're not going to quit like Gilby." And I go, "Oh, I have to use the bathroom." And I called Gilby, and I go, "Dude, what's going on, man? I'm subbing for you." He goes, "Oh, no, man, we're not working good. You take the gig. You deserve it." I go, "I'm just too busy to do it." So I went back in, and I go, "Okay, well, okay." Gilby said, "You take the gig," because I don't know what I think it's just Gilby was really busy, but so I'm playing with Nancy, and we have to go play in front of the Washington Monument for Memorial Day. So the day before I rehearsed, we decided to go down to we decided to in the Cole Studios. Remember Cole Rehearsal Studios?
Of course.
We went down there to rehearse. I went down there, Headcat. We rehearsed there. Well, Nancy decided instead of going to the center staging that she normally does with she went just a little place to rehearse. So I said, let's go to Cole Studios. I was there the night before. And so she came down. We had a little band there. And she goes, "I want to do that song Back in the USA. Does anyone know the lyrics?" I go, "Well, I have a CD of me, Lemmy, and Slim Jim playing last night. And you can." So she's sitting over there. She's listening to Lemmy sing Back in the USA. And she's writing out the lyrics. The bass player goes, "There's not many people consider they played the same song in the same studio with Lemmy, and then the next night with Nancy Sinatra."
Totally. I mean, that's a total legend. And I did have a run-in because when I was doing the Tuesday night jams with Gilby, we were doing Tuesday night jams every Tuesday with Teddy and Gilby. I would leave my amp there So the next day I went there, and Don Randy was rehearsing with Nancy, and I walked in and she waved. I go, I'm so sorry. And I got starstruck because I'm like, this is Nancy Sinatra. You know, it's like, how could you not? And I just got all quiet, but there was a run-in with me and Nancy.
Where's the rehearsal at?
They were rehearsing at the Baked Potato.
Yeah. We used to rehearse in the daytime, and I remember the first.
I wonder if I walked in and you were there then.
We didn't do it that often, but we did it sometimes. And I remember the first time I did, I told Don Randy, I used to come down here and see Larry Carlton when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And so Don's going, hey Nancy, Danny says he used to hang out here all the time. He used to come to my club. Don was impressed. I used to go to his club. Like, Don, you're a legend.
I mean, for anybody who doesn't know the Baked Potato, and we're talking about Don Randy. Don Randy is part of the Wrecking Crew, who played on all that great Phil Spector, all these greats with Hal Blaine and Leon Russell. And there was one time, it was me and Clem Burke, and it was Wayne Kramer, and we were rehearsing in the afternoon. And it was, I believe, with Gilby. So Clem is on drums, and Don brings his friend in there. And the guy, I just got divorced, and I told this story before. The guy kept talking to me. He wouldn't let me go. He goes, oh, my friend's going to love you, Stefan, because we're both from Brooklyn. It turned out this guy's going to never get married. I go, I like his friend, but he won't leave me alone. Clem goes, it's Hal Blaine. I go, oh, he could stay. He stood on the stage. That was my moment of legendary status. So
because of Don, I got to know Hal. I actually played a show at the Baked Potato with Hal on the drums.
Wow.
And I remember and we did some songs that Hal had even played. And but I got to see why Hal was so good, because he turned to Don and go, how's this going? He go, Bryce, you played on the record, and Hal would show it to him. And so Hal would do it. But if Hal missed the stop, you always make it sound like a perfect little roll. Like, so if he's playing along and we stop, instead of going, oops, he'd put a little tag on it, and that would be like that was a genius part.
It was a signature. He knew how to ad-lib really well, you know. But oh man, see, these are the legends like this, from playing with Robert to Nancy Sinatra to all these cats. I mean, these are great stories, Danny. I gotta bring you back on. We gotta talk more what you're doing. Make this happen. Appreciate your time being here today. We're gonna I'll let you go, and
we'll catch up.
We'll make it happen. Everybody, that's Danny B. Harvey. Links for him will be in the description down below. Give us a thumbs up, and make sure you put your comments down below, and tell us the Robert Gordon song you love. All righty. If I wish I could play more of his music to pay tribute to him, because beautiful. And you got to work with a beautiful person, a great musician. And thanks for being here. Give Slim a big hug, and tell your wife that I said, you need to take the show on the road, and I could be the manager. Okay. Until then, everybody, we're out of here. I'm Stefan. That's Danny B. Harvey. We love you. Mwah.